They called her the gold digger who dug her own grave. When the gavel slammed down, finalizing the most brutal divorce in New York's history, Linda stood in absolute silence. No tears, no screaming. She simply signed the papers that stripped her of every penny, leaving her with nothing but the clothes on her back. Her husband, the tech tycoon Marcus Thorne, laughed as he walked out with his young mistress on his arm, thinking he had won. He didn't know that Linda's silence wasn't defeat. It was a countdown. Because the moment she walked out of that courtroom, a secret worth billions was about to be unleashed, one that wouldn't just ruin Marcus, it would erase him. The air in the Superior Court of Manhattan was stale, recycled, and heavy with the scent of expensive cologne and impending doom. To the gallery of spectators, reporters, and hungry paparazzi, this wasn't just a legal proceeding, it was a public execution. Linda Vance sat alone at the defendant's table. Her posture was rigid, her face a mask of porcelain indifference. She wore a simple charcoal suit, off the rack, a stark contrast to the bespoke Italian wool worn by the man sitting 10 feet away. Marcus Thorne, the CEO of Thorne Dynamics, the visionary of the decade. He sat with his arm draped casually over the back of his chair, whispering something into the ear of his lead counsel, Sarah Jenkins, a shark in Louboutins who had never lost a high-profile divorce case. Mr. Thorne contends that the defendant, Ms. Vance, has contributed precisely 0 to the valuation of Thorne Dynamics, Sarah Jenkins announced, her voice slicing through the courtroom. She paced before Judge Arthur Pendleton, holding up a thick financial dossier. In fact, during their 5-year marriage, Ms. Vance has no employment record, no assets to her name, and has lived entirely off the generosity of my client. The prenuptial agreement is ironclad. She leaves with what she came with. Nothing, the gallery murmured. It was humiliating. They were painting Linda as a leech, a woman who had snagged a billionaire and tried to hold on for dear life, only to be shaken off. Marcus looked at Linda. His eyes, usually cold and calculating, held a glint of triumphant pity. He expected her to fight. He expected her to scream about the nights she stayed up helping him practice his pitches, or the time she nursed him through the stress-induced ulcers when the IPO almost failed. But Linda said nothing. Ms. Vance? Judge Pendleton peered over his spectacles. Do you have any counter-arguments regarding the validity of the prenuptial agreement? Linda stood up slowly. Her hands were clasped in front of her. She looked at Marcus, then at the judge. No, Your Honor. I accept the terms. A gasp rippled through the room. Even Sarah Jenkins looked momentarily stunned. They had prepared for a bloodbath, a long, drawn-out battle for alimony. You accept? The judge asked, clarifying. You understand this leaves you with no alimony, no claim to the marital properties in the Hamptons or Aspen, and no stock options? I understand, Linda said, her voice steady, low, and terrifyingly calm. I want nothing from Mr. Thorne. I only request that my maiden name be restored immediately. Marcus chuckled, a sound that was caught by the microphones. He leaned forward. Let her have the name, he said, loud enough for the press to hear. It's the only thing she owns. The gavel came down with a sound like a gunshot. So ordered. Divorce granted. As the court adjourned, the chaos erupted. Reporters swarmed the aisle. Marcus stood up, buttoning his jacket, and was immediately joined by a young woman who had been sitting in the front row, Jessica Miller, his 24-year-old executive assistant, and the reason the marriage had ended. Jessica clung to Marcus, flashing a diamond ring that was bigger than the one Linda had ever worn. Marcus! Marcus! How does it feel to be a free man? A reporter shouted. It feels profitable, Marcus quipped, flashing his winning smile. He turned to Linda, who was gathering her few papers. He stepped close to her, invading her personal space. "You were smart to give up, Elle," he whispered, his breath smelling of mints and arrogance. "You almost made it out with dignity. Almost. Good luck with the job hunt. I hear Starbucks is hiring." Linda finally looked him in the eye. For a second, the mask slipped, and Marcus saw something he couldn't identify. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't anger. It was the look of a predator watching prey walk into a trap. "Enjoy the victory lap, Marcus," Linda said softly. "You've earned what's coming to you." She turned and walked out the side door, bypassing the press, slipping into the shadows of the bustling New York streets. 3 weeks later. The penthouse overlooking Central Park was a distant memory. Linda now lived in a 4th-floor walk-up in Queens. The paint was peeling, the radiator clanked like a dying engine, and the view was a brick wall. To the world, Linda Vance had ceased to exist. The tabloids ran their stories for a few days. Thorne trims the fat. The silent ex-wife, from riches to rags. And then moved on to the next scandal. Marcus was everywhere, on the cover of Forbes, launching his new AI initiative and vacationing in Saint-Tropez with Jessica. But inside the cramped apartment, the atmosphere was far from desperate. It was operational. The small dining table was covered not with unpaid bills, but with 3 high-powered laptops, a secure satellite phone, and a biometric safe. Linda sat in a cheap ergonomic chair, typing furiously. The timid, quiet wife of Marcus Thorne was gone. In her place was the woman she had been before she met him, the woman she had hidden to protect herself from a past that was far more dangerous than a divorce court. Her phone buzzed, an encrypted line. She picked it up. "Status," she said. "The transfer is complete, ma'am," a male voice replied, deep, British, and deferential. This was Julian, her oldest confidant. "The board of Thorne Dynamics is preparing for the quarterly review. Marcus is pushing for the acquisition of Vanguard Tech. He's leveraging everything to get it." "He's overextending," Linda said, her eyes scanning streams of data on the center screen. "He thinks his stock price is invincible because of the divorce news. He thinks he shed the dead weight." "He is arrogant," Julian agreed. "But he is still the majority public face. The shareholders love him." "They love the projection of him," Linda corrected. "They don't know who actually holds the leash." She opened a file named Project Ouroboros. It was a complex web of shell companies, offshore trusts, and venture capital firms. Most people knew Marcus Thorne had started Thorne Dynamics with a massive angel investment 5 years ago. What no one knew, what even Marcus didn't know, was the source of that money. He believed it came from a consortium of anonymous investors in Zurich. He was wrong. The money came from the Vance estate. Linda wasn't just a nobody from nowhere. She was the sole heiress to the Vance titanium empire, a legacy of industrial wealth, so old and so private that it didn't appear on Forbes lists because they paid to keep it off. She had walked away from it 10 years ago to live a normal life, to find love without the complication of her net worth. She thought she had found that with Marcus. She had used a proxy to fund his dream, keeping her identity secret so he would never feel inferior, so he would feel like a self-made man. She had played the supportive housewife, dimming her own light so he could shine, and he repaid her by cheating on her with his assistant and humiliating her in front of the world. "Ma'am," Julian's voice cut through her thoughts. "The invitation for the Metropolitan Charity Gala has been secured. Marcus and Jessica will be the guests of honor." "Perfect," Linda said. She stood up and walked to the small closet. Inside, wrapped in plastic, was a gown that cost more than the entire building she was living in. Prepare the car, Julian, not the sedan, the Phantom. And your identity for the evening? Linda Vance is dead, she said coldly. Tonight, introduce me as the chairman of EV Holdings. She hung up. On her laptop screen, a graph showed the stock price of Thorne Dynamics. It was high, historically high. Climb higher, Marcus, she whispered to the empty room. The fall will kill you faster. While Linda plotted in Queens, Marcus Thorne was drinking champagne in a glass-walled office 60 floors above Manhattan. "Babe, come look at this view," Jessica cooed, leaning against the window. She was wearing a silk robe she had found in the closet, one that Marcus hadn't bothered to tell her used to belong to Linda. Marcus swirled his drink. "I've seen the view, Jess. It's my city." "Our city," she corrected with a pout. "Right. Ours." Marcus smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Since the divorce, a strange unease had settled in his gut. It was too quiet. He had expected Linda to come back begging for money. He had expected a drunken phone call. Nothing. "Mr. Thorne?" Marcus turned. His CFO, David Bradley, stood in the doorway, looking pale. "Not now, David. I'm celebrating." "It's about the Vanguard acquisition," David said, stepping into the room and closing the door. "We have a problem, a blocked transaction." Marcus frowned, setting his drink down. "Blocked? By who? The FTC?" "No, by our primary investor group, the Zurich Consortium." Marcus laughed. "That's impossible. They've been silent partners for 5 years. They cash the checks. They don't vote." "They're voting now," David said, handing over a tablet. "They've frozen the liquidity assets. We can't buy Vanguard without their approval, and they've called for an emergency meeting." "When?" "Tonight, at the gala." "The gala is a party, not a boardroom," Marcus snapped. "Who is the representative?" "They wouldn't say. They just said the managing partner of EV Holdings, the parent company of the Zurich Group, will be in attendance, and they want to talk to you." Marcus loosened his tie. He didn't like this. EV Holdings? He had never heard the name. He had always dealt with intermediaries. Why step out of the shadows now? "Fine," Marcus growled. "If they want to play hardball, we'll play. I'm the face of this company. Without me, their investment is worthless. I'll charm them, whoever he is." "She," David corrected. Marcus paused. "She?" The memo referred to the managing partner as her. Marcus scoffed. "Great, another woman to handle. Get the legal team on standby, but keep them out of sight. I don't want to spook the investors. I'll deal with this woman tonight, get her sign-off, and be done with it." He walked over to Jessica and kissed her forehead. "Change of plans, babe. Tonight isn't just a party. It's business. Wear the red dress. We need to look like royalty." As Jessica squealed in delight, Marcus looked out the window again. The sun was setting, casting long, blood-red shadows over the city. He felt that itch again, that feeling of being watched. He shook it off. He was Marcus Thorne. He had just won the biggest battle of his life against his wife. He wasn't afraid of some corporate bureaucrat. The Metropolitan Charity Gala was the heartbeat of New York's social calendar. It was a place where alliances were forged, fortunes were flaunted, and reputations were either polished to a shine or shattered on the marble floor. Marcus Thorne stepped onto the red carpet with the confidence of a king. Cameras flashed in a blinding staccato rhythm. He tightened his grip on Jessica's waist. She was beaming, soaking in the attention, posing exactly how she had practiced in the mirror. She wore a bright crimson gown with a plunging neckline, loud, aggressive, and undeniably sexy. "Mr. Thorne, over here. Is it true Thorne Dynamics is acquiring Vanguard?" A reporter from the Wall Street Journal shouted. Marcus flashed a thumbs up. "Big things are coming. Stay tuned." He felt invincible. The earlier worry about the mysterious investor had faded with the first glass of vintage champagne. He was Marcus Thorne. He could charm anyone. Inside the grand ballroom, the atmosphere was thick with the scent of lilies and old money. A string quartet played softly in the corner. Marcus navigated the room, shaking hands with senators and tech moguls, introducing Jessica as his partner. "Where is this mysterious woman from EV Holdings?" Jessica whispered, bored. "I want to see if her dress is better than mine." "She's probably some old battle axe in a pantsuit," Marcus scoffed. "Don't worry about her. I'll handle the business. You just look pretty." Suddenly the room changed. It wasn't a noise, but the absence of it. The chatter near the entrance died down, rippling outward, until the entire ballroom fell into a confused hush. The string quartet faltered, then stopped. All eyes turned to the grand staircase. At the top stood a woman. She was wearing a gown of midnight black velvet that seemed to absorb the light around her, structured and architectural, hugging a silhouette that was both elegant and imposing. Diamonds, real, heavy, vintage diamonds, dripped from her ears and encircled her neck. Her hair, usually pulled back in a messy bun during her marriage, was now a sleek, dark cascade down her back. But it wasn't the dress. It was the face. Marcus dropped his champagne flute. It shattered on the floor, spraying glass and liquid over Jessica's red dress, but neither of them noticed. "Linda," Marcus whispered, his voice cracking. It was her. But it wasn't the Linda he knew. The Linda he knew was soft, apologetic, and shrank away from conflict. This woman descended the stairs with the slow, predatory grace of a panther. She didn't look at the floor. She looked straight ahead, her eyes sweeping the room with a gaze that dismissed billionaires as mere peasants. A murmur broke out in the crowd. "Is that the ex-wife? I thought she was destitute. Look at those diamonds. That's the Romanov necklace. That belongs to the Vance family collection." Linda reached the bottom of the stairs. The crowd parted instinctively, creating a wide path. She didn't walk toward the buffet or the bar. She walked straight toward the VIP table, reserved for the board of Thorne Dynamics. Marcus, recovering from his shock, felt a surge of anger. How dare she? How dare she show up here, looking like that, trying to upstage him? She must have spent her entire divorce settlement. No, she didn't get a settlement. She must have found a sugar daddy. That was it. She had found some old fool to sponsor her revenge tour. He stormed over to her, intercepting her in the middle of the room. Jessica trotted behind him, trying to wipe champagne off her dress. "Linda!" Marcus hissed, grabbing her arm. She stopped. She looked at his hand on her arm, then up at his face. Her expression was one of mild disgust, as if a stray dog had jumped on her. "Remove your hand, Marcus," she said. Her voice was not loud, but it carried a chill that froze him. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Marcus demanded, lowering his voice, but increasing the intensity. "Did you crash this party? Who got you in? If you're here to beg for money, this is the wrong place. You're embarrassing yourself." Linda gently shook her arm free. She brushed the spot where he had touched her, as if wiping away dirt. "I'm not here for you, Marcus. I have business to attend to." "Business?" Jessica laughed, a shrill, nervous sound. "What business? Cleaning the tables?" Linda turned her gaze to Jessica. She didn't blink. She looked the younger woman up and down, dissecting her insecurity in a single second. "Nice dress, Jessica. It's a shame it's stained. Cheap fabric absorbs liquid so quickly." Jessica gasped. "Security." Marcus waved at a nearby guard. "Get this woman out of here. She's not on the list." The head of security, a large man named Frank, who had known Marcus for years, walked over. But he didn't look at Linda. He looked at Marcus with an apologetic expression. "I can't do that, Mr. Thorne," Frank said. "What do you mean you can't? I'm the keynote speaker. She's a trespasser." "She's not a trespasser, Marcus," a booming voice interrupted. Marcus spun around. It was Charles Wellington, the organizer of the gala, and one of the most powerful bankers in New York. Charles ignored Marcus and bowed his head slightly toward Linda. "Miss Vance," Charles said with genuine reverence, "we are honored you chose to make your return to society with us. Your table is ready." Marcus felt the room spinning. "Miss Vance? Charles, what is going on? This is my ex-wife. She's nobody." Charles looked at Marcus with a mixture of pity and confusion. "Nobody?" "Marcus, don't you know who you married? This is Linda Vance, as in the Vance Titanium legacy, as in the chairwoman of EV Holdings." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. EV Holdings. Linda Vance. The color drained from his face. "No," Marcus stammered. "That's impossible. She's a graphic designer. She clips coupons." Linda took a step closer to him. The crowd leaned in, hungry for the kill. "I was a wife who wanted to be loved for who she was, not what she owned," Linda said, her voice clear and ringing. "I wanted to build something with you, so I stayed in the shadows. I let you think you were the genius. I let you think you were the provider." She leaned in close, her lips brushing his ear. "But the play is over, Marcus. You wanted a divorce? You got one. You wanted my name removed? Done. But you forgot to ask where the money for your company came from." She pulled back, a cruel smile playing on her lips. "I am EV Holdings, Marcus. I own 60% of your debt, and we have a board meeting right now." The private conference room on the mezzanine level of the hotel was soundproof, but the silence inside was louder than any scream. Marcus sat at the long mahogany table, his hands shaking. Jessica had been barred from entering. She was currently crying in the lobby. Across from Marcus sat his CFO, David, who looked like he was about to vomit. And at the head of the table sat Linda. She didn't look like an ex-wife anymore. She looked like a CEO. Flanking her were 3 high-powered lawyers, and Julian, her British fixer. "Let's cut to the chase," Linda said, opening a leather dossier. "You want to acquire Vanguard Tech. You need the liquidity to do it." "Linda, look," Marcus started, trying to summon his famous charisma. He leaned forward, putting on his reasonable guy face. "I know you're hurt. I get it. The divorce was messy. But this is business. Thorne Dynamics is on the verge of a breakthrough. If we buy Vanguard, the stock triples. You make money, I make money. Let's not let emotions tank $1 billion deal." Linda stared at him. "You still don't get it. You think this is a negotiation." She slid a document across the table. "David," she said to the CFO, "read paragraph 4, subsection B of the original angel investment contract." David picked up the paper, his hands trembling. He adjusted his glasses. The primary investment from EV Holdings is classified as a high-risk callable note." Marcus frowned. "What does that mean?" "Keep reading," Linda commanded. "It means," David swallowed hard, "that the lender, EV Holdings, reserves the right to recall the full principal amount, plus interest, immediately, upon the occurrence of a qualifying event." "And what is a qualifying event?" Linda asked. David read further, his face turning ashen. "A qualifying event includes a change in the CEO's marital status." The room went dead silent. Marcus stared at the paper. You put a divorce clause in the angel investment?" "I didn't," Linda said calmly. "My father's lawyers did, 10 years ago, when I set up the trust. It's a standard protection for family assets. If I marry someone, and that person uses my money to build a business, and then leaves me, I get my money back." She leaned back in her chair. "The loan is $150 million. With compounded interest over 5 years, you owe me roughly $210 million. "I don't have $210 million in cash," Marcus shouted, standing up. "Every cent is tied up in stock and the new R&D facility. If you call this loan, you bankrupt the company." "Correct," Linda said. "You're crazy." Marcus slammed his fist on the table. "You'd burn down your own investment just to spite me? You own equity. If the company goes under, you lose too." "Marcus," Linda said, her voice dropping to a whisper that was more terrifying than his shouting. "I have a net worth of $4 billion. Losing $100 million is a tax write-off for me. For you, it's your life." She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. "I gave you everything, Marcus. I cooked your meals. I listened to your pitches. I held you when you cried, because you were afraid of failing. And when you succeeded, you looked at me and decided I wasn't shiny enough for your new life. You traded me for a secretary and a magazine cover." She turned back to him. "I'm calling the loan. You have 24 hours to wire the funds, or EV Holdings will file for immediate liquidation of Thorne Dynamics to recover assets." "You can't do this," Marcus whispered, panic finally setting in. "The shareholders, the board." "The board answers to the money," Linda said. "And I am the money." "Please," Marcus begged. The arrogance was gone. He looked small. "Linda, please, we can work this out. I can give you a seat on the board. I can give you credit for the founding. Just don't destroy the company. It's my legacy." "Your legacy?" Linda raised an eyebrow. "That brings me to the second point." She nodded to Julian. Julian stepped forward and placed a second document on the table. "During your marriage," Julian said in his crisp British accent, "Ms. Vance worked extensively on the foundational code for the Thorne AI. We have timestamps, server logs, and original commits from her private laptop, proving that 80% of the core algorithm was written by her." Marcus's eyes widened. "She helped, but it was my idea." "Ideas aren't copyrightable. Code is," Julian said. "Since Ms. Vance was not an employee and signed no intellectual property assignment agreement, and since the work was done prior to the incorporation of the final entity, she owns the copyright to the core code." Linda smiled. "I'm issuing a cease and desist order, Marcus. You are barred from using the algorithm. Without it, your tech is just a fancy metal box." Marcus collapsed into his chair. It was a checkmate, a total, absolute dismantling of his existence. "You have 24 hours, Linda said, checking her diamond watch. "I suggest you start selling the Hamptons house, and the penthouse, and the car." She turned to leave. "Linda!" Marcus cried out, desperation in his voice. "Why? Why did you wait? Why didn't you tell me who you were?" Linda stopped at the door. She didn't turn around. "Because I wanted to know if you loved me, or the money," she said. "I got my answer." She walked out, leaving Marcus alone in the silent boardroom, the weight of his own greed crushing him into dust. As she stepped into the hallway, she saw Jessica Miller sitting on a bench, mascara running down her face. Jessica looked up, seeing Linda. Is he okay?" Jessica asked, her voice trembling. Linda stopped. She looked at the girl who had helped destroy her marriage. She didn't feel anger anymore, just pity. "He's broke, Jessica," Linda said simply. "Technically, he's about -50 million in debt. If I were you, I'd return that ring before the repo men come for it." Linda walked toward the elevator, the sound of her heels clicking on the marble floor like the ticking of a clock that had finally run out of time. The morning sun hit the floor-to-ceiling windows of Marcus Thorne's penthouse, but for the first time, the light felt exposing rather than triumphant. Marcus hadn't slept. He was pacing the living room, his phone glued to his ear. The floor was littered with empty coffee cups and the shredded remains of the legal notice Linda had served him. "What do you mean? We can't stop it!" Marcus screamed into the phone. "You're the best lawyer in New York. Get an injunction. Claim she committed fraud. She lied about her identity for 5 years. That has to void the contract." On the other end of the line, Sarah Jenkins sounded exhausted. "Marcus, listening to me. Omission is not fraud in this context. She used her legal name. You never asked about her family. The high-risk callable note is watertight. The bank is already moving to freeze the corporate accounts. If you don't wire that money by 5 p.m., the sheriff is coming to padlock the doors." "Then stall them!" Marcus threw the phone across the room, or it cracked against the marble wall. He looked around. The penthouse was silent. Jessica wasn't there. She had left an hour ago, muttering something about going to her mother's house. He knew she wasn't coming back. The rats were fleeing the ship. But Marcus Thorne wasn't a rat. He was a wolf, and a wolf cornered is the most dangerous animal alive. He grabbed his laptop. If he couldn't win in court, he would win in the court of public opinion. He would destroy Linda before she could destroy his company. 11 at LM, the press conference. Marcus set up a podium outside the headquarters of Thorne Dynamics. He had called every major news outlet. CNN, Fox, the New York Times. They were all there. They smelled blood. Marcus stepped out. He looked disheveled on purpose. No tie, sleeves rolled up. He wanted to look like the victim, the hard-working genius under attack by a vengeful heiress. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus began, his voice shaking with feigned emotion. "I built this company from a garage. I poured my sweat and blood into Thorne Dynamics, but today it is under attack. Not by competitors, but by a woman I once trusted." The cameras zoomed in. "My ex-wife, Linda Vance, has revealed herself to be a corporate spy and a fraud," Marcus lied, leaning into the microphone. "She hid her identity as a billionaire heiress for our entire marriage to manipulate me. Now, out of spite because our marriage failed, she is using her family's infinite wealth to hostilely take over my life's work. She doesn't care about the employees. She doesn't care about the technology. She only cares about revenge." He wiped a fake tear from his eye. "I am asking for the public's support. Don't let big money bully innovation. Don't let Vance Titanium crush the little guy." It was a brilliant performance. For a moment, the reporters murmured sympathetically. Twitter began to buzz. Save Thorne started trending. Marcus walked off the stage feeling a surge of hope. He had spun the narrative. He was the underdog now. But he had forgotten one thing. Linda was watching, and Linda didn't play by the rules of spin. She played by the rules of truth. 11:15 a.m. The leak. As Marcus walked back into the lobby, his phone buzzed. It was a notification, then another, then 1,000. The giant screens in the lobby of Thorne Dynamics, usually displaying stock prices, suddenly flickered. The feed changed. It was a video. The audio boomed through the lobby. It was a recording from inside the boardroom, dated 3 years ago. Video narrative. Marcus is sitting with his feet up on the table, holding a glass of scotch. He is talking to David, the CFO. The investors. Marcus laughs in the video. Screw the investors, and screw the code. Once we IPO, I'm cashing out half my shares. I don't care if the tech actually works long term. I just need it to look good for the launch. If it crashes in 2 years, I'll be on a yacht in the Mediterranean. David asks, "What about Linda?" "She's working 18 hours a day on the patch." Marcus sneers. "Linda is a workhorse. She likes the grind. Let her type away. I'm the face. Nobody cares about the person who writes the code, David. They only care about the person who sells it. I'll replace her the second we go public." The video ended. Silence descended on the lobby. Marcus stood frozen, staring at his own face on the giant screen. The employees, who had gathered to watch his speech, turned to look at him. Their expressions ranged from shock to pure hatred. He had just told the world he cared about the company. The video proved he was a fraud who planned to dump the stock and abandon them. Then, a second notification hit the news cycles. EV Holdings released the full audit of Thorne Dynamics. It showed that Marcus had been embezzling company funds to pay for Jessica's apartment, the diamond ring, and his trips to Saint-Tropez. He had been charging personal luxury expenses as R&D consultation. The underdog narrative evaporated in seconds. The Faster Save Thorne hashtag was instantly replaced by Siege Jail for Thorne. Marcus turned to run for the elevator, but two men in suits were blocking the path. Not security guards, federal agents. "Marcus Thorne?" the lead agent asked, holding up a badge. "We have a warrant for your arrest regarding securities fraud and embezzlement. Please turn around and place your hands behind your back." As the cuffs clicked onto his wrists, Marcus looked out the glass doors. Across the street, a black Rolls-Royce Phantom was idling. The back window rolled down just an inch. He saw a pair of dark sunglasses and a flash of red lipstick. Linda watched him being shoved into the back of the police car. Then, the window rolled up, and the car drove away into the New York traffic. The falter of an empire doesn't happen with a bang. It happens with the dull thud of a wooden gavel. 6 months had passed since the FBI raid on Thorne Dynamics. In that time, the world Marcus Thorne had built, a world of glass walls, private jets, and magazine covers, had been meticulously dismantled, brick by brick. The brand was radioactive. The stock had been delisted, trading at zero. The assets were frozen, seized, and now, finally, liquidated. The auction was held in a nondescript, high-security event hall in Midtown Manhattan, usually reserved for bankruptcies that required discretion. But there was nothing discreet about this. It was a feeding frenzy. The room was filled with what the business world called vultures, distressed asset managers, patent trolls, and competitors looking to pick the carcass clean for pennies on the dollar. Marcus Thorne sat in the very back row. He shouldn't have been there. His lawyer had advised against it. "It's masochism, Marcus," he had said. "Don't go watch them bury you." But Marcus couldn't stay away. He looked like a ghost of his former self. The bespoke Italian suits were gone, seized as assets or sold to pay for his legal defense. He wore an off-the-rack jacket that was slightly too large in the shoulders, a stark indicator of the 30 pounds he had lost from stress. His hair, once perfectly coiffed, was thinning and grey at the temples. He sat with his hands clasped tightly in his lap to stop them from shaking. No one spoke to him. Men he had dined with, men he had hosted on his yacht, walked past him as if he were furniture. He was worse than poor. He was a pariah, a fraud, the man who tried to cheat the Vance family and got caught. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are resuming with Lot 400, the auctioneer announced. He was a dry, clinical man who spoke with the emotionless efficiency of an undertaker. Office fixtures and executive branding from the 50th floor suite. Marcus watched as his desk, the massive, custom-carved mahogany desk where he had signed the documents to divorce Linda, was rolled onto the stage. "Opening bid, $500, the auctioneer droned. $600, a man in the front row shouted. Marcus recognized him. It was the CEO of a rival startup, a man Marcus had once publicly mocked at a TechCrunch conference. $700. Sold for $700. Marcus felt bile rise in his throat. That desk had cost $40,000. It was a symbol of his power. Now, it was being sold for the price of a used laptop to a man who would likely burn it for firewood, just for the irony. The auction dragged on for hours. Marcus sat in a daze, enduring the torture. They sold the art from the lobby. They sold the server racks. They even sold the espresso machines. It was a systematic erasure of his existence. Finally, the room grew quiet. The air conditioning hummed, a low drone that sounded like a held breath. "We now move to the final lot of the day," the auctioneer said, adjusting his glasses. He looked down at his podium, then up at the crowd. "Lot 405, the intellectual property portfolio of Thorne Dynamics. This includes all registered patents, the trademarked branding, and the source code for the Thorne AI predictive algorithm." The room shifted. People sat up straighter. This was the prize. This was the engine that had driven the company's valuation to $1 billion. Despite the scandal, the tech was real. The code worked. Everyone knew it. Marcus leaned forward, his heart hammering against his ribs. This was his soul. Even if he couldn't own it, he needed to know it was going to someone worthy. Maybe Google. Maybe Microsoft. Someone who would respect the genius of it. Due to the complex legal encumbrances surrounding the copyright, the auctioneer began, choosing his words carefully, and the ongoing litigation regarding authorship, the starting bid is set remarkably low. Do I hear $1 million? Silence. Marcus frowned. 1 million? It was worth billions. 500,000? The auctioneer asked, scanning the room. Still silence. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Marcus realized with horror what was happening. No one wanted it. The lawsuit Linda had filed regarding her authorship was so toxic, so ironclad, that no company wanted to touch the code. If they bought it, they bought the lawsuit too. Linda Vance had effectively poisoned the well. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is fully functional, state-of-the-art heuristic code," the auctioneer said, sounding desperate. "Do I hear 100,000? A man in a grey suit raised his paddle. 10,000. The auctioneer sighed. "I have 10,000. Do I hear 20? 15. Another voice called out. It was humiliating. They were bidding on his life's work like it was a damaged car at a police auction. Then, the doors at the back of the hall opened. The heavy thud of the double doors closing echoed through the silent room. Heads turned. Linda Vance walked in. She didn't walk like a woman entering an auction. She walked like a queen entering her throne room. She wore a suit of stark, blinding white, a sharp contrast to the grey and black of the depressed room. Her heels clicked on the polished concrete floor with a rhythmic, military precision. She wore dark sunglasses, which she slowly removed as she walked down the centre aisle. The auctioneer paused. The bidders lowered their paddles. Linda didn't look at the crowd. She didn't look at Marcus. She walked straight to the front row, where a seat had been left empty, as if the universe had been expecting her. She sat down, crossing her legs, and placed her paddle on her knee. "We have a bid of $15,000, the auctioneer stammered, clearly thrown off balance by her sudden appearance. "Do I hear 20? Linda didn't raise her paddle. She simply spoke, her voice clear, melodic, and carrying to every corner of the room without the need for a microphone. $1. The room froze. The auctioneer blinked. I beg your pardon, ma'am." $1, Linda repeated. She turned her head slightly, scanning the room of vulture capitalists. Her gaze was withering. "I am Linda Vance. I am the primary lien holder on this company's debt. I am also the verified author of 80% of the code in this lot. If anyone else in this room bids on this item, my legal team, who are standing outside, will serve you with a copyright infringement lawsuit before you can even walk to your car." She paused, letting the threat hang in the air like a guillotine blade. "So," she smiled, a cold, terrifying expression. "Does anyone want to bid $2? The silence was absolute. It was heavy, suffocating. The man who had bid $15,000 slowly lowered his paddle and put it on the floor. The CEO who had bought the desk looked at his shoes. No one moved. No one breathed. To bid against Linda Vance now wasn't just financial suicide. It was social suicide. The auctioneer looked around, wiping sweat from his forehead. He knew he had no choice. "I have a bid of $1, he croaked. "Going once." Marcus felt tears hot and stinging in his eyes. He wanted to stand up. He wanted to scream, objection. He wanted to vomit. "Going twice." Linda didn't even look at the auctioneer. She was looking at the screen displaying the code structure. Her code structure. "Sold," the auctioneer whispered, slamming the gavel down. "To Miss Vance." The sound of the gavel finalized it. It was over. The legacy of Marcus Thorne had been sold for less than the price of a cup of coffee. The room began to clear out immediately. The vultures had lost their prey. They gathered their briefcases and hurried to the exits, eager to escape the suffocating aura of dominance Linda projected. Linda stood up. She walked to the podium, signed the digital transfer pad, and accepted the small black hard drive containing the master keys. She turned to leave. "Linda." The voice was cracked, broken. She stopped in the aisle. She didn't turn around immediately. She took a breath, composing herself, then slowly pivoted on her heel. Marcus was standing at the end of the row. He looked small. The grandeur that had defined him for 5 years was gone, stripped away to reveal the insecure, frightened man underneath. "Hello, Marcus," she said. Her tone wasn't angry. It wasn't even triumphant. It was indifferent. "You took it," Marcus whispered, stepping out into the aisle. He walked toward her, his steps heavy. "You really took it all. The money, the reputation. And now, the code. My code." "Your code?" Linda raised an eyebrow. "Marcus, we both know you haven't written a line of code since college. You were the salesman. I was the architect." "I built the company," Marcus shouted, his voice echoing in the empty hall. "I pitched it. I got the meetings. I put my face on the magazines. That counts for something." "It did," Linda nodded. "It counted for a lot. It bought you a penthouse. It bought you fame. It bought you a lifestyle you clearly enjoyed." She took a step closer to him, her eyes hardening. "But you forgot the golden rule of business, Marcus. The salesman is replaceable. The product is not." Marcus slumped. The fight drained out of him. "What are you going to do with it?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Are you going to rebrand it? Launch Vance AI? Rub it in my face that you can run it better than I did?" "No," Linda said. She reached into her purse and pulled out the hard drive. She held it up between them. "I don't want to run a tech company, Marcus. I never did. I just wanted to create something that helped people. That's why I wrote it. To optimize hospital triages. To help disaster relief logistics. You turned it into a tool for profit maximization." She looked at the drive. "I'm releasing it." Marcus stared at her. "What?" "I'm releasing the source code. Open source. MIT license. As of 10 minutes ago, my team has already uploaded the repository to GitHub." Marcus's eyes widened in horror. You can't. That's billions of dollars in IP. You're just giving it away?" "Yes," Linda said simply. "By tomorrow morning, every university, every hospital, every startup in the world will have access to this engine. They can use it, modify it, improve it, free of charge." "But," Marcus stammered, his brain failing to comprehend the magnitude of her action. But then, it's worth nothing. To you, it's worth nothing, Linda corrected. To the world, it's priceless. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. And do you know the best part, Marcus? Since it's open source, no one owns it. Which means Thorne Dynamics never really existed. In 5 years, no one will remember the company. No one will remember the stock price. And no one will remember you. It was the ultimate punishment. She wasn't just bankrupting him, she was erasing him from history. She was taking his legacy and dissolving it into the ether, making it common property. He wouldn't be a villain in the history books. He wouldn't be anything. Marcus fell to his knees. The physical weight of the realization crushed him. He sobbed, a dry, heaving sound. Why? He choked out. Why didn't you just leave me? Why did you have to burn the earth? Linda looked down at him. For a fleeting second, a shadow of the woman who had once loved him passed over her face. The woman who had made him coffee, who had tied his ties, who had believed in him when he was nobody. Because you didn't just break my heart, Marcus, she said softly. You broke my trust in the goodness of people. You taught me that silence is dangerous. So, I decided to make some noise. She turned away from him, her white suit catching the light from the exit sign. Goodbye, Marcus. Try to find an honest job. It builds character. She walked out the double doors, leaving them swinging in her wake. Outside, the air was crisp and smelled of rain and exhaust, the smell of New York City. A sleek black car was waiting at the curb. Julian, her loyal friend and fixer, stood by the open door. Is it done, Mom? Julian asked. It's done, Linda said, sliding into the leather seat. The upload? Live across all servers, Julian confirmed. The download count is already in the thousands. The tech blogs are calling it the gift of the century. Linda smiled. She leaned her head back against the headrest and closed her eyes. Good. Let's go. The airport? Yes, Linda said. Florence. I need to see the sun. As the car pulled away, merging into the stream of yellow taxis and buses, Linda didn't look back at the auction house. She didn't look back at the ruins of her marriage or the man kneeling on the concrete floor of an empty hall. She looked forward. Inside the hall, Marcus Thorne finally stood up. His knees were dusted with dirt. He checked his pockets. His wallet was empty. His phone had been disconnected that morning due to non-payment. He walked out the side exit, emerging into a back alley filled with trash cans. It started to rain, a cold, grey drizzle. He pulled his collar up. He walked to the subway station on the corner. He dug into his pocket and found a crumpled Metro card with a few dollars left on it. He swiped it at the turnstile. Beep. Go. He pushed through the metal bar. He stood on the platform, surrounded by strangers, tired commuters, and tourists. No one looked at him. No one knew that the man in the wet, ill-fitting suit had once been the king of New York. The train arrived with a screech of metal on metal. The doors opened. Marcus stepped inside and grabbed a plastic handle. The doors closed, sealing him in. As the train rattled into the darkness of the tunnel, Marcus Thorne stared at his reflection in the dirty window. A ghost stared back. And then, the train disappeared into the dark. The story of Linda and Marcus isn't just a drama about a divorce. It's a brutal lesson in humility and the danger of underestimating the people who love you. Marcus thought silence was weakness. He thought that because Linda didn't shout, she didn't have power. He learned too late that the quietest people often hold the loudest cards. Linda didn't just win a court case. She dismantled an ego and reclaimed her identity, proving that true power doesn't need to brag. It just needs to be ready. What would you have done if you were Linda? Would you have taken the high road, or was her revenge exactly what Marcus deserved? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story that will keep you on the edge of your seat. See you in the next video.